Ehren, right here, Question Period Canada. How y'all doing? Monday, let's see who shows up. It'll be interesting. We've got a few minutes before the question period kicks off, and I have a couple of videos that I made this morning that we're going to show. This is pretty interesting. I think it's a great way to kick off today. We're going to take a look at Stephanie Cousy in committee. It's very interesting. She's always on the edge of flipping out, which is entertaining to watch, always. So we are going to jump into that. I'll get caught up with a couple of other things while we're watching that. We'll be able to slip into the live question period right away. Let's kick this off with Stephanie Cousy.
Recognized by the Speaker, the member from Calgary Mindapore.
Damning new information revealed today shows that ArriveCan contractors submitted receipts to the government for a company that doesn't even exist. Wow. This investigation already includes allegations of identity theft, forged resumes, contractual theft, fraudulent billing, price fixing, and collusion in the creation of the $54 million ArriveCan app. How much worse can this boondoggle get? Simple question, which Liberal insiders got rich?
Who got rich?
Did she say boondoggle? Hey gang, what's up? Just Ehren right here, Question Period Canada. Do you guys recognize Stephanie Cousy from the intro there? She's a wild cowgirl MP from Alberta, giddy up. And she has a point of order that she wants to make. She's upset about the ArriveCan scam app. They're doing an investigation at OGO committee. It's always interesting. Let's take a peek at Stephanie Cousy. She is a woman on fire with a point of order to make.
Of order, please go ahead, Ms. Cousy.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much to our witnesses for being here today. But Mr. Chair, I want to go into a piece of business I believe is very important for this committee, and not only for this committee, but for all Canadians. I believe it touches on a subject that we studied last year, very closely tied to the Arrive scam scandal, which I'm sure our witnesses here today have heard about, and that is the damning report of the procurement ombudsman regarding McKinsey. McKinsey, a company that has over $100 million in contracts with the...
We'll get to it, Mr. Backrack.
Thank you very much. It is relevant. Thank you very much. The committee.
No, but it has to be an actual point of order.
I'm waiting for that, Mr. Backrack. Please continue,
Thank
Mrs.
you.
Cousy.
Over $100 million in contract with this Trudeau government. But the most damning piece of this contract, of this report, Mr. Chair, is the fact that the procurement ombudsman found that the government actually bent the rules to favor McKinsey. Something similar we saw in the Arrive scam scandal. Once again, we see this Liberal government favoring their friends and insiders in McKinsey with the report of the procurement ombudsman, as we did in the Arrive scam scandal. Now, this is no surprise.
You get it?
As we have had, of course, the Dominic Barton, who came and testified at this committee, further tying the relevance, who advised Justin Trudeau on the Advisory Council on Economic Growth and their Indo-Pacific Advisory Committee. And then, of course, they went on to, I'm getting to the point, Mr. Chair, if they will allow me to do that.
Is this a point of order? I don't think this is a point of order.
Hey,
No,
gentlemen.
it's an abuse of the process.
Mr. Backrack, please, I have the floor, Mr. Backrack. I understand, Miss, if you allow me to speak. Please, if you could just have silence. Mrs. Cousy, if you can get to your point of order, please.
Yes, of course. And then he went on to create the failed scandal-plagued Canada Infrastructure Bank. And the greatest stain on our society, I believe, currently, Mr. Chair, is his role, McKinsey's role in the opioid crisis, where they had to pay $600 million in damages.
Is this Clips Monday?
So, you know, I think given this report by the procurement ombudsman today, Mr. Chair, that it is absolutely necessary for this committee to hear from the procurement ombudsman regarding this report and from the CBSA once again. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Dive Crew Canada, man, that's a lot. That's not necessary. Thank you.
Gentlemen,
Mr. Chair,
please.
if I may, as a point of
Thank
order.
you. That's
Yes,
a lot
on
of...
that point of order or a different point of
You
order?
blow me away all the time.
Well, I'm just wondering what your ruling will be on the point of order raised by my colleague, Ms.
Oh,
Cousy.
if I could get to it, I could probably make such a ruling. Mrs. Cousy, I appreciate your comments. It is not a point of order. Colleagues, if you have read the report, though, it is pretty.
We agree, but that doesn't have.
I'm glad you agree. It's a just.
We will
let
be
me
jumping
please-
right into
It is a
question
rather
period.
damning report. I appreciate Mrs. Cousy's comment, though it is not a point of order. I'm glad that you do agree. Perhaps we've had the ombudsman in before.
That's not.
Okay. My colleagues and Liberals agree with me agreeing. No, I do hope that we will agree that we can get to actually having Mr. Jiglet in NPSBC and perhaps on the report that he's spent the past year doing. And I hope if everyone's fine, we'll find some time to do that.
We're still on the same point of order with
Yeah.
the chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Backrack.
Well,
If you had
I
anything
think
else.
I share my colleague's concern about the report, and I very much want to see this committee examine that in great detail. My concern is just when points of order are used inappropriately and the chair doesn't cut them off. I don't think that's a latitude that you would allow me or anyone from another party. And so I would just ask in the future that points of order be restricted to actual points of order. And I think all parties are guilty of that at different times, but it's just frustrating, and it's a frustrating way to start an important meeting. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
I should have cut you off halfway through. No, I understand what you're saying. I've allowed wide latitude on other point of orders. I agree, but this one is certainly not a point of order. But I'm glad that you agreeing with me and Mr. Jouari that perhaps we do need to bring Mr. Yiglik and PSPC on that report. So we'll leave it at that if everyone's fine. We will now get to our witness statement.
Let's take a couple more looks at Stephanie Cousy. She is a wild one. She's fun to watch when she's on the House of Commons floor. Let's take another peek at Stephanie Cousy. How many of me are you going to see at the same time?
After 8 years, scandal runs rampant in the Liberal NDP government. We all know about ArriveCan, and now we know about another $5 million in fraudulent billing. To make matters worse, the billing is across 36 departments and dates back to 2018, pre-pandemic. This is only the first wave of even more fraudulent billing cases. This Prime Minister is not worth the cost. So can the Minister answer one simple question? How many millions of dollars in fraudulent billing did Arrive scam cost Canadians? Mr. Speaker, even the Auditor General said that a crisis situation is no excuse for this lack of value for money for Canadians. Conservatives have put forward today a motion related to a Rise scam to get money back from the contractors who did no actual work. There is one person in this chamber who can make that decision, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has the power to make the decision to get the money back for hard-working Canadians. So will the Prime Minister commit today to getting the money back for Canadians, or will he shirk his responsibility like he usually does?
So gang, yeah, that's the wild cowgirl, Stephanie Cousy. She's an MP from Alberta, giddy up. Yep. And she's always fun to watch. We've had a couple of looks at her on the House of Commons floor in the OGO committee investigation. All right, guys, question period has started, so we're going to avoid or just skip my bookend there, and we're going to jump right into the show because let's get it going. Question period, guys. Should be fun.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 long years of this Prime Minister,
Okay, we're just about ready to go.
struggling. I have received countless emails, phone calls, and letters from residents, and the message I'm receiving is clear and consistent. Life is unaffordable. Under this Liberal government, people are losing their homes. They are struggling to feed their families. They cannot afford to heat their homes or drive their vehicles. While life has gotten worse for Canadians, the Liberals are spending more than ever. This year, Canada will spend over $52 billion to service this Prime Minister's debt. This is more money than the government is sending to the provinces for health care. In response to this Liberal-made affordability crisis, my common sense Conservative colleagues.
Hey everybody, what's up? So these are the statements before question period kicks off.
Number 2, build the homes. And number 3,
Probably
fix
needs
the
some more
budget.
volume on the.
Conservatives will not support tomorrow's budget unless it provides relief to struggling Canadians. Will the Prime Minister commit today to axe the tax in tomorrow's budget?
Probably a little more volume, guys.
The honourable member from Mississauga, Ehren Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, Canadians who filed their taxes
Oh, look at who it is.
on March
Everybody's
15th or
favorite.
before will receive the new Canada Carbon Rebate amounts. In the provinces where it applies, the Canada Carbon Rebate will put even more money back into the pockets of most Canadians than they pay into fighting climate change. Affordability is front and center in everything that we do as a government, and in this system, we are literally putting money into the hands of Canadian families.
How bad is that volume, guys? Looks low.
They work them into their monthly budgets, and that's especially the case for low to middle income Canadians who benefit the most from fighting climate change. Unfortunately, the Conservatives want to cut these rebates that Canadians rely on, but we will not let them ruin these rebates, Mr. Speaker. Canadian families need it more than ever. Thank you.
The honourable member from Barrie Innisfil.
It's as if the Prime Minister has forgot that he's been in power for almost 9 years and that he and his policies, all of them, are the direct cause of the housing and mortgage crisis Canadians are facing. The way he's been parading around the country blaming everyone else but him for the housing hell reminds me of that old Shaggy song, "It Wasn't Me." Well, it was him who was caught red-handed promising to lower the price of housing, rents and mortgages in Canada that have doubled in 9 years, pushing middle-class Canadians to live in 10 cities in nearly every city. Last week, CMHC confirmed that it's been him causing less affordable housing and higher rents because fewer homes are being built than we did in the 1970s. Worst of all, it is him who's dealt a devastating blow to young Canadians hoping to enter the housing market, young people who feel like they've been lied to and let down by this Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has a chance to axe the tax in tomorrow's budget to make life more affordable for Canadians. The question is, will he? Or will he continue to blame others for the problems he's caused and say it wasn't me? Because Canadians know it is the Prime Minister.
That's right. The honourable member from St. Margaret's South Shore.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, Canadians
That's good. Rick Perkins is in the House. I haven't seen him on the House Commons floor asking questions in a while.
With increased visits as high as 50% in Cape Breton. In Sydney, food banks are experiencing record-breaking increases in the number of new clients, with new visits up 80%. And the Souls Mission Kitchen is up 280%. Instead of providing relief to Canadians, this government has hiked their costly carbon tax on Nova Scotians by 23%. Liberals don't understand. If you tax the farmer that grows the food, the trucker that trucks the food, and the retailer that sells the food, you tax all those who buy the food. This Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Conservatives have a solution. Axe a tax on farmers and food by immediately passing Bill C-234 in its original form. To be clear, Conservatives want the entire carbon tax.
What's up, True Blue? How are you doing?
Let's at least provide some relief to
Dive Crew Canada, good day, sir. I know it's been a tough weekend. Heart goes out. Everybody give Dive Crew Canada some love. Say hello. Just my brother needs a little pat on the back today.
Speaker, in 2015, Canada was clearly on the wrong track when it
Life
came to
can be
carbon
challenging,
emissions.
guys.
The Conservatives had no climate plan, pollution was free, and emissions were still rising. Today, thanks to work being done across the country, Canada's emissions have
up,
fallen
Chuck
by
the Canuck?
8%. For the first time ever.
Feng Shui,
we
is that
are
how you
on
say
track
that?
to meet
What's up?
our 2026
Obviously,
climate
hello
target.
Sheila, hey Patty, Kirk, what's up brother? Brent, my man, what is going on? James, Dave Johnson, yo yo yo, Lisa Hudson, what's going on girl?
Will receive over $1,200 through the Yukon Carbon Rebate this year.
Taco Takio, is that how you say that? What's up?
Gets $1,488 in automatic.
Mr. Pickles, who doesn't like pickles? Come on.
Temperature. On this side of the house, we're reducing emissions.
Hey Boomer
and making
Media,
life
what is
better
up?
for Canadians.
The
Khalid sucks.
From Algoma, Manitoulin, Kapuskasing.
Mr. Speaker, to be from Northern Ontario is to live and breathe hockey. Whether at
Hey,
your
Lightning
local
Rod,
arena,
what's up?
Frozen Pond, or in the streets, we love our national hockey game. But it's been a difficult year for hockey in Elliott Lake. The Centennial Arena was forced to shut its doors in September due to structural damage. The communities of Blind River and Massey stepped up to give our youth a place to play.
Anne-Marie, thank you so much.
These youth deserve an
We don't
arena
have a
in
lot
their
for the
own
members
hometown.
extra yet,
And
but
so
it's coming
organizers
along.
rallied through voting
We're getting
campaigns,
better
and
at some
I rise
things.
to thank all of those across the country who helped Elliott Lake be crowned Kraft Hockeyville 2024, giving them $250,000
Good day,
towards
Colonel.
arena
How are
repairs
you?
and a preseason NHL game. But that's not all. Last week, former Elliott Lake residents Jamie and Joanne Armstrong donated $300,000, which kicked off a campaign to raise another $200,000 for repairs to the arena so that next year the Elliott Lake Vikings and the Elliott Lake Minor Hockey Leagues can be back on home ice. Now that's a hat trick to be proud of, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. First of all, on behalf of the Bloc Québécois, I would like to commend the courage and determination of the member for Madawaska, Restigouche, in his fight to allow MPs who wish to do so no longer swear an oath to the King when they are sworn in. The history of Acadia is the history of a people persecuted by the British Crown. Thousands of Acadians who
They love you
were
in here,
deported during the
Dive Crew
Great
Canada,
Upheaval died
and they
during
should.
deportation.
You're a wonderful
But,
person.
say Liberal ministers,
Sorry
but that
about your
doesn't
friend.
matter. There are things that matter more than the honor and pride of Acadians. We have no time to waste on the monarchy, they say. Well, that, coming from a party which claims to be democratic and anti-colonial, that's frankly embarrassing. But not as embarrassing as hearing Conservatives behaving like tavern keepers at 3 o'clock in the morning shouting, "God save the King." They're proud of the fact that a monarch, by birthright, a foreigner, governs them. Well, I call that voluntary servitude. The member for Madawaska Restigouche deserved better than that sorry display of indifference toward the history of the Acadian people. It's shameful, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from King Vaughan.
Mr. Speaker, both the Bank of Canada and former Liberal Finance Minister told this Prime Minister that he was pressing on the inflationary gas pedal with his spending that ballooned interest rates.
Hey, Nature,
But
what's
he
up? How are
didn't
you?
listen. As a result, the Bank of Canada went on the most
Crystal
aggressive
Miller,
interest
what's
rate
up?
hike campaign in Canadian history. This Prime Minister is leaving behind a legacy like no other. Under his regime, rent, mortgage payments, and down payments have doubled. Record deficits have driven interest rates sky high. And food bank usage is at a record
Poilievre's
high.
always in the house,
April
Dive Crew
1st,
Canada.
He increased the carbon tax
He wasn't there
by
on Thursday, which
23%, which is causing
little
even
strange.
more pain in the pocketbooks of Canadians. Common sense Conservatives will not agree to support the budget unless he axes the carbon tax on food, builds homes, not bureaucracy, and caps the spending. This Prime Minister is just not worth the cost.
The honourable member from Calgary Skyview.
Mr. Speaker, I watched a video from a proud Albertan
Cahal is
who did her
gross.
family taxes and got over $800 back through the Canada carbon rebate. Her family even got a little bump. They lived in a rural environment. She said that she probably ended up better off with that transfer. Who said this? Premier Daniel Smith. While she should be supporting Albertans,
It's a weird thing,
the
like,
Conservative premier of
these
my
liberals don't
province is now
understand
playing
that
politics,
Canadians
and
want
since April
change.
1st, has even reinstated her 13
Like,
cents
he's trying to
per
trash
liter gas tax.
Danielle Smith, but he's talking to like maybe 25% of Canadians that are going to listen to that. Everybody else likes her.
Hardworking Canadians.
Not Lightning Rod,
Mr. Speaker,
but
the
everybody
Canada
else.
carbon rebate gives 8 out of 10 families more money than they pay in carbon pricing. Canada is also on track to meet its climate targets for the first time ever. The carbon pricing alone will account for a third of our emission reductions by 2030. Carbon pricing isn't just a feel-good measure.
Oral questions.
Here we go. Let's kick it off. Let's go. Pierre Poilievre in the house. Let's get it going.
Conservatives, common sense conservatives, will cut taxes, build housing, fix the budget, stop the crime. Yet, This Prime Minister is not worth the cost, the interest cost after 8 years. The government will spend more on interest on our national debt than on health care. More money for bankers, less for nurses. When will the Prime Minister accept my common sense plan to fix the budget with a dollar-for-dollar law to reduce interest costs for Canadians? The Honourable Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
ABT, what's up?
Mr. Speaker, common sense or
Okay,
nonsense?
well, we're going to get the dancing
He
clown
wants to cut
today.
the programs that support the middle class. He wants to cut programs to build housing. He wants to cut programs that protect our environment. That is not common sense. It is incompetence. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Incompetence from the minister who lost 1 million Canadians, who was the
Whoops,
worst
it was only 1
Minister of
million
Immigration
people.
in our
Big
history.
deal.
His own Prime Minister admitted that he led the out-of-control immigration system. That's why, according to them, the cost of housing has doubled. Now, he is pushing the prices further. Inflationary deficits are adding 2% to interest rates. $6,000 for a family with a $300,000 mortgage. Will the government reduce the deficit and interest rates so Canadians can keep their money and their houses? The Honourable Minister of Innovation.
All right, little
Mr.
FCP
Speaker.
coming in.
6 is the number that Canadians at
PC.
home need to remember. What we've just heard, the leader of the Conservatives, he wants to advise Canadians, but he was able to just build 6 units of affordable housing when he was minister. Mr. Speaker, I'll repeat, we will take no lessons from the Conservatives. On this side, Mr. Speaker, we have a plan to build houses, create jobs, create prosperity. Canadians know that slogans don't build houses, they don't build prosperity, and they won't help Canadians. Every day is a good day to fight for Canadians. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Common sense Conservatives will axe
Here we
the
go.
tax
Here we
bill
go.
homes, fix the budget, and stop the crime. This Prime Minister is not worth the cost of interest. According to Scotiabank, the Prime Minister's deficits are adding 2 full percentage points extra in interest costs for the average family. That works out to about $6,000 for a modest mortgage of $300 grand. $6 grand in extra mortgage payments from these deficits alone. Will they
Get the
finally
likes
wake up to
going.
the fact that this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition seems to know the cost of everything but the value of absolutely nothing. Does he not see value in the measures that are building more homes in this country? Does he not see value in programs that are going to put food on the table for hungry kids through a school food program? He continues to oppose measures that are helping students with the cost of their education and the families with the cost of housing. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to put measures on the table to make life more affordable for middle-class Canadians and do right by a generation of young people who've been priced out of the housing market. It's a shame his policies would have the exact
His tie's not long enough. His tie doesn't
The
fit.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker,
dork.
we can't see the value of homes and food that don't exist after 8 years. They have a food program which after 8 years has no food, a affordable housing program which has doubled housing costs. They're not worth the cost, and now their deficits are driving up the interest obligations for the average family. For a family with a $500,000 mortgage, deficits are adding 10 grand in additional interest payments per year. When will they realize that after 8 years, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, he wants to talk about
Hi, Jason. Hi, Charlene.
Perhaps we should look at the 800,000 affordable housing units that were lost while he was housing minister. Perhaps we should examine the fact that while he was minister, 0 new apartments were supported by the federal government and a total of only 6 affordable housing units nationwide. Now, he likes to talk a big game, but let's look at the plan he's putting on the table. He wants to raise taxes on home construction and cut funding for the cities that are making it easier to build home. We've advanced programs that are not just going to build more homes, but allow people to save up more money with their down payment and reduce their monthly mortgage costs when they go to join the housing market for the...
Excusez-moi. Excusez-moi.
Excusez-moi.
I understand that there was a problem with
Je
interpretation.
m'excuse.
To see, is the interpretation now working from English to French? Do we have English to French? Do we have it working now? Can anybody give me a signal? Okay. Alors, je vais inviter le...
So I will invite the minister to restart his answer because it wasn't understood by a number of members. The Honourable
Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, the honourable member wants to talk about homes that don't exist. Let's talk about the 800,000 affordable housing units that were lost when he was last in government. Let's talk about the fact that when he was actually housing minister, he got 0 apartments built with the support of the federal government. Let's look at the fact that across the entire country, he was able to get a total of only 6 affordable housing units built. Mr. Speaker, he talks a big game, but he does literally nothing for the people who need to get into the housing market. We've got new measures that help people who are renting now and measures that will make it easier to save up for a down payment and to reduce your monthly mortgage costs if you want to own a home in this country.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
More proof this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost is that he picked the most incompetent immigration minister in Canadian history and put him in charge of housing. The guy who lost track of 1 million people, who's
Going
blamed
hard.
by his fellow cabinet colleagues for causing the housing crisis, and who presides over the most expensive housing market in Canadian history. When I was minister, the average rent was $950, and we built hundreds of thousands of units at that affordable price. So why won't he learn from our smashing success in 2015 in keeping costs low by axing the tax and building the home?
It's a question that makes sense, right? Like,
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, now at the time they expressed opposition to our plan to welcome 40,000 Afghan refugees who fought alongside the Canadian Armed Forces.
like Fraser
They
knows.
still have problems with the fact that we opened our doors to vulnerable Ukrainians. But let's actually focus on the housing issue right now, Mr. Speaker. He talks a big game about housing, but he plans to raise tax.
They heckled his entire question.
It's so interesting all the time. Oh, Mr. Speaker's going to straighten it out. Don't worry. Order.
The Honourable
Comrades.
Order. I'm going to ask all members on all sides of the House to please, I'll ask the Honourable Member from Milton.
Oh my God, he just stands here, guys. Like, imagine, like, by now, how many minutes are we into this? And he's delayed it by, he's just gonna stand there, be stunned, like a zombie. It's kind of funny, but what do you think of Mr. Speaker Lightning Rod? What is your take on Greg Fergus? Is he useful or part of a problem?
To please bring this back to order.
So stunned.
The Honourable Minister has 15 seconds left on the clock.
Mr. Speaker, they get antsy when they're confronted with their actual record. Let's take a look at what he got done. Only 6
Our next video is going to be on
across
Mr.
the
Speaker.
entire country. Lost 800,000 more. 0 new apartments. Now he wants to raise taxes on home building and cut funding for the communities who are getting them built.
Then I have
The Honourable Member for La Prairie. Urgent message to those who still think we shouldn't care about jurisdiction and let the federal government decide everything. CMHC proves that when the federal government meddles in housing, an exclusive jurisdiction of Quebec, Quebecers receive only 14% of the money, even though we are 22% of the population.
Get a
It's
little bit
worse
of
when the federal
downtime
government
with
chooses the projects itself, as in affordable housing,
the
where we
old
receive
Bloc
only 6%,
Québécois.
even though we are 22% of the population.
Started off pretty
When the
good,
federal
though. Hey,
government
Bonnie,
gets involved,
what's up?
Quebecers don't get their share, starting with the less well-off. Who would accept being ripped off like that? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, each has their own priorities. We talk about investing in housing. They want a
Look
referendum.
at Kenny Rogers. He's all.
We are investing
What?
in our youth and our seniors. The Bloc
Kenny
said they need a
Rogers goes
referendum.
retro.
We want our
What?
youth to have full tummies at school, but no, they say the solution to everything is a referendum. As they prepare their referendum, we are preparing the future. The Honourable Member for La Prairie. That's anything at all. When the federal government meddles in Quebec's jurisdictions, Quebecers get shortchanged. Housing is a perfect example. We represent 22% of the population, but we get 14% of the money and only 6% in affordable housing. In addition to never having given us our fair share, tomorrow's budget will add insult to injury. They're going to impose new conditions on the extra $6 billion of our money they're promising for housing. Why not just unconditionally transfer Quebecers' fair share of the housing money? Can he answer that question? The Honourable Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities. Mr. Speaker, we are working with Quebec to ensure that Quebec will receive its fair share of the funding for housing. For example, with the program to accelerate the building of housing in Quebec, we have an agreement with $900 million of federal money and $900 million from Quebec. The result is $1.8 billion and 8,000 affordable housing units. We are continue to advance programs to ensure support is received in Quebec and throughout the country.
The Honourable Member from Burnaby South.
People are getting gouged at the grocery stores and CEOs are making record profits, all because the Prime Minister kept the Conservatives $60 billion.
Dirty Santa, hey, Mr. Pickles, good one.
Paying the price. Loblaws made $1.2 billion because of this corporate conservative handout. So will the Prime Minister...
What? So Greg Fergus has
Honourable members,
something up his butt today.
From Grand River, Miramichi, Grand River, to please only take the floor when he's recognized by the Speaker. If the Honourable Member from Burnaby South can start from the top, please.
Mr. Speaker, you can tell Conservatives get really touchy when we talk about corporate conservative handouts. People are getting gouged at the grocery store and CEOs are making record profits. And the Conservatives are again making noise because they're upset because they want to give more corporate handouts to companies like Loblaws that are gouging Canadians and ripping off people because they want that to happen. That's who they work for. Their chief strategist is a Conservative lobbyist for the biggest corporation that sells groceries.
All wound up.
Will the Prime Minister reverse these Conservative corporate handouts, yes or no?
Yes or no? Do you hear Canadians when they want an election? Yes or no? Jagmeet's got to go.
The Honourable Minister of Innovation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the leader of the NDP for bringing a very important question on this floor, Mr. Speaker. But it seems that he's been missing a part, Mr. Speaker. He was with us in order to make the largest reform on competition in this country, Mr. Speaker. In fact, thanks to this work and the help of the NDP and our government, Mr. Speaker, we made the largest reform on competition in our nation history. But one thing, if he wants to help consumer, Mr. Speaker, why don't he work with us to make sure that we would have a grocery code of conduct across the nation, Mr. Speaker, to help consumer, to help families, to help young kids, Mr. Speaker. They can do something. We're waiting for it.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
To take on the corporate greed, which is driving the price of groceries up. Galen Weston se régale encore.
He always does this show-off trick where he uses his bilingual ability.
$1.2 billion.
A lot of people have that ability in the House of Commons. I don't understand why he doesn't.
Has the opportunity
Jagmeet's
to
a
put in
loser.
place a tax on excess profits for grocery giants. Will he do it? Yes or no?
That's on their end.
The Honourable Minister of Innovation. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the leader of the NDP for having supported us when we launched the
What's up,
biggest
Clint? What's
reform
up,
on competition in the
Cryptomeria?
country, because
Cryptomeria?
Canadians who are watching from home know that the best way to stabilize prices in the country is to have more competition in the country. That is exactly what we've done. And now I encourage him, if he wants to help Canadians, if he wants to help families and youth, why not support us to have a grocery code of conduct throughout the country? On this side of the House, we will continue working for young families, for Canadians, for consumers throughout the country.
The honourable member from Calgary, Forest Lawn.
While the finance minister is out buying new budget shoes today, she should drop by a Toronto food bank where 1 in 10 Torontonians are having to use their services after 8 years of her government. Tomorrow's expensive photo op budget will only confirm why interest rates are staying higher for longer and why Canadians can't afford to eat, heat, and house themselves. After 8 years of this Liberal NDP government, they are not worth the cost of housing. Will this Liberal NDP government listen to Conservatives, cap spending, bring in a dollar for dollar law to bring down inflation and interest rates so Canadians don't lose their homes?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Maybe the honourable member opposite needs to take a look at what is announced earlier this month and the month before, which is that inflation in Canada is below 3% for the second month in a row. Mr. Speaker, AAA debt rating for this country, one of the very few countries in the world to have that. Mr. Speaker, lowest debt to GDP ratio. Now, while that party is all doom and gloom, we are here working every day for Canadians on a school food program, on a Canada Child benefit, on making sure that we have $10 childcare across the country. Mr. Speaker, we're working for Canadians each and every day.
The honourable member from Calgary, Forest Lawn.
With answers like that, he'll make a great high-priced Liberal consultant after the next election who's not worth the cost. What doesn't he understand? When 2 million Canadians are going to a food bank in a single month, 1 million more projected to this year, where young people can't see the dream of home ownership, where rents and mortgages have doubled after failed policy of the Liberal NDP government. Why doesn't he get with the program and before he gets kicked out of his position and listen to Canadians? Why don't they implement a dollar-for-dollar law, cap the spending, so Canadians don't lose their homes?
This is great. It's pretty fun.
For Employment and Workforce Development.
Mr. Speaker, that party and that member not only have no plan for housing, the meager plan that they have actually wants to make it more expensive to build houses in this country, and they're against every single measure that we've done to actually make home ownership affordable for Canadians again. Mr. Speaker, that Alberta MP voted against Air Products' $1.6 billion net hydrogen plant in our province, voted against the first carbon capture, use and storage net zero cement plant in our province. Mr. Speaker, they're voting against Alberta jobs. They're voting against Canadians. We're here for Albertans and Canadians each and every day.
The honourable member from Peterborough, Kawartha.
After 8 years, this NDP Liberal government Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Emily Wheaton is a single mom who lost her home because she didn't qualify for her mortgage renewal. Why? Because of this Liberal NDP inflationary spending, which has driven up interest rates. So now she's forced to rent. She's paying nearly $4,000 for a 600 square foot apartment. Tomorrow's budget, we're asking for the Prime Minister to show compassion and sanity. Have a dollar of spending for every new dollar spent, so Canadians can afford to keep their homes.
It's a good question.
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, what you will see in tomorrow's budget is support for renters and homeowners alike, and we'll do that all the while being fiscally prudent with the lowest debt to GDP ratio in the G7 with a AAA credit rating from an independent, objective observer, Mr. Speaker, as well as traditionally low unemployment. We do that at the same time as working for the most vulnerable in this country, something that the Conservatives...
So I'm just going to stop her for a second. I don't do this very often, like put them in pause while I'm going to be trying new things. Anand is full of shit right here. I made a video last night that explains, well, I didn't make the video, I kind of reposted a piece that Poilievre's crew did that explains how they're like throwing these numbers that seem like good statistics at Canadians, but the real numbers are the things that they're not saying. Anyways, Anand, not a fan, guys. I do not like this lady.
Against every single time. We expect all members
And she sounds terrible.
support Canadians across the board. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Peterborough, Kawartha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Pile of dung.
What Canadians don't believe is anything they say.
Yeah,
They've had
exactly.
8 years to prove a record, and more homes were built in the 1970s than have been built today. 10 cities across this country are normal. Don't tell people they've never had it so good when we have record high usage of food banks, when we have young people who will never own a home, and when interest rates have went up 2%, causing $10,000 a year in interest payments alone. Shame. Let's do a dollar for dollar. Let's show some sanity, and let's allow Canadians to keep their homes.
The Honourable Minister for Families and Children.
I think what
Oh,
Canadians
Lord.
need to know is what the Conservative response is to
Send
the
in a
affordability
hippie.
challenges that Canadians are facing. It's cuts. It's cuts to the programs that they need and
Fear-mongering.
supporting them
It's
in a
fear-mongering
time of
what
need.
this
Abandoning
lady's
them when
doing
they
right
most
here.
need it. On this side of the House, we've put forward a national school food program. We've put forward $10 a day childcare, the Canada Child Benefit, supports that are helping Canadians put food on the table and support their families, in contrast to everything that they oppose.
L'honorable député de...
The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable.
Mr. Pickles, man, that's unnecessary.
The Liberal Prime Minister and his ministers have been displaying all the failures
Mr.
of this
Pickles, oh my
government
God,
after
you guys
8
are gonna
years.
make me crack
Inflation,
up.
Interest rates, rents, mortgage payments, everything's going up. And it's going to continue with the Liberals. Tomorrow is the budget day. Will the Prime Minister, who isn't worth the cost, at least accept our demands to cut taxes for farmers and food, build housing, not bureaucracy, and apply dollar-for-dollar discipline, and especially put an end to the
Thank you,
parade
Mr. Pickles.
of
Welcome to
inflationary
all the new
spending
members.
So Canadians can feed themselves and house themselves. The Honourable Minister for Public Services and
You're
Procurement.
amazing, Pickles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I
affordable
believe
housing
you
units.
must be a
That's what the leader
gherkin.
of the Conservatives built when he was housing minister. That's in contrast with the 8,000 affordable housing units that we are building now in partnership with the government of Quebec and municipalities. In Mégantic-L'Érable, the project will be building 24 affordable housing units just there, 4 times more than were built by the Conservative leader, the chief insulter. The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable. It's not 24, it's 48, Mr. Speaker, and it's worse. CMHC is slow in approving that project. Mr. Speaker, I'm so surprised to hear that minister give results, showing off results that there's tens of thousands of affordable housing units. He wants
Bitty
to
Zoom, what's
build
up? How are you?
to correct a crisis his government created. That's the reality, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow, will they understand common sense, build housing, not bureaucracy, so that Canadians can house themselves and get out of the crisis that they built? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm very pleased to see that my colleague knows that we're doing much more than the Conservative leader, the chief insulter, did during his time as Minister of Housing. There's another project in his riding, in addition to the one he mentioned, called Envole-toi, 13 affordable housing units for people who need them, people who otherwise would be on the street. 13 is 2 times 6, double what was built by the Conservative leader, the chief insulter, during his whole term for the whole country. The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. French Prime Minister Gabriel Attal addressed the National Assembly on Thursday, and as a worthy representative of the country of the Enlightenment, he delivered an inspired plea for state secularism, which is equally valued by the French and Quebecois. France, like Quebec, prohibits the wearing of religious symbols by government employees in positions of authority. France goes even further than Quebec's Bill 21, which this Prime Minister wants to challenge before the Supreme Court, claiming that it is discriminatory. Has the Prime Minister told France that he finds it discriminatory, or is he reserving his contempt for Quebecers? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, Canada is a secular country and Quebec is a secular province.
Kenny
Nobody is
Rogers
calling that into
knows when to
question, but the
hold
Bloc
them
Québécois
'cause he
is
wears the
looking for a
glasses.
way to create disputes, to
He just
oppose
grew up.
people, to say that because we're proud Quebecers, we should separate because we're different from others. No, we can be proud Quebecers, proud Canadians at the same time, and we don't have to choose between the two. They're just talking about referendums. And while they do that, we're talking about building a more just, more open, more inclusive society, a strong Quebec in a united Canada. The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. I'll quote Prime Minister Attal, faced with those who claim not to understand what secularism is, who would like to twist it, who would have us believe that it is some kind of anti-religion weapon who would have us believe that it is a form of discrimination. We respond that secularism is the prerequisite for freedom, for equality, for fraternity. Mr. Speaker, our Liberal, Conservative, and NDP colleagues are among those who pretend not to understand. Can they at least avoid challenging at the Supreme Court what they misunderstand? The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada. I appreciate the question, and my answer is the same one that I've already given here in the House. It's the same answer of the Prime Minister. It's that with Bill 21, if it goes to the Supreme Court, we will be there as the Government of Canada to defend the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Freedom of expression, freedom of equality, equality between the sexes. These are important issues. It's important to defend the Charter. The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. Prime Minister Attal.
Hey, Thoth. Hello, Helen. How are you guys?
They are not alone. France has
Wilson.
banned
Rocky Mountain Lady,
for
what's
people in
up?
positions of
Good to
authority
see you.
Since
Semper
1905.
Fidelis. What's
We
up?
have Belgium, Norway, Denmark, and several German
Fidelis.
provinces. In fact, I'll quote the European Court of Justice. In order to establish a totally neutral
Marie
environment,
Perrin,
a
what's
public
up? Good to
authority
see you.
may prohibit the visible wearing of any sign revealing
Tiran,
religious
what's up?
beliefs. Mr. Speaker, is the European Union
It's hard to keep
discriminatory
track
too,
of everybody,
or
like
is it
who I
just
said
Quebecers?
hello to yesterday and today, but I mean to say hello
the
to
Honourable Minister
everyone.
of Justice and the Attorney General of Canada. With the context of Bill 21, as I've said, and I'll repeat,
This Verani is
When
kind of a
the decision is made by the
sketchy
Supreme Court.
for
If it gets to that level,
Attorney General. Like,
we will be there.
do you trust that
as we've
person
said.
when he's talking to
The
you?
Government of Canada will always be there
Not
to
me.
protect Canadians in their rights in the Canadian Charter. The Charter protects equality, expression, and equality of the sexes. We will be there if it gets to the Supreme Court. Thank you.
The honourable member from Northumberland, Peterborough South.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Farmers have reached a breaking point. The carbon tax has driven costs sky high. They are drowning in a sea of red tape, and worst of all, they're constantly derided and demonized by this Liberal government. Will this Prime Minister finally give farmers a break and axe the tax to make food cheaper for everyone by passing Bill C-234 in its original form?
What's up, Harry? How are you? Harry Scholes. Harry Tate, I think, is in the room. Hello,
Thank you
Harry.
very much, Mr. Speaker. And being a farmer, I'm fully aware
Oh,
that
Lord.
farmers are
Like
on the
he all-
front
like he
line
knows.
of climate
Magoo.
change. They see the devastation
Yeah, right.
impact of climate change in this country and the destruction of burns, killing cattle. But also we have a price on pollution, Mr. Speaker, and along with the price on pollution, we have
It's not funny, guys.
Canada carbon rebate, which puts more money back in the pockets of Canadians. Mr. Speaker, why does the Conservative Party of Canada want to take that money away from Canadians?
I don't like making fun of Magoo, but like it's time to go, bud. Like,
Mr.
TikTok.
Speaker, it was clear from the PBO that 6 out of 10 Canadian families are worse off. They're worse off because of that carbon tax and so-called rebate. It's clear that these Liberals will not lift a finger to provide farmers and Canadians with relief from their cruel carbon tax. And if the Prime Minister won't commit to passing C-234 or a carbon tax election, what does he have to say to the families of Autonomy South Monaghan who've doubled their use of the food banks in the last 6 months?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I would respond to the Honourable Member that he just should advance a couple rows up here.
Come
I
on.
can introduce him if he'd like. Speak to the Opposition House Leader. Bill C-234 is completely in their hands. If they would like to bring it to the floor for a vote, we could deal with it.
there's something wrong with his face. Like, not that I've got a perfect face. I know there's many features here that need work, but
which would bring the carbon rebate to double what it is today. Let's
did he just
pass that
flip
today,
us off?
have a positive impact for the constituents that he serves, and bring a better carbon rebate
Kind
to
of
rural
felt like it.
Canada.
Not a McKinnon fan.
The honourable member from Battle River, Crowfoot.
On April 1st, that Prime Minister
yes.
the already crippling carbon tax by 23%. Jake from Vermeer's Dairy near Camrose calculated that by 2030, he will be paying nearly $1,500 a month in additional carbon tax for the daily milk pickup alone. That is higher costs that consumers are forced to pay because of those Liberal policies. After 8 years, that NDP Liberal Prime Minister is simply not worth the cost. So my question for those Liberals is this. Will they pass Bill C-234 in its unamended original form so that Canadians can afford to eat?
The Honourable Minister for Natural Resources and Energy.
It is important that people are not talking nonsense in the chamber. The parliamentary budget officer actually said that he was extremely troubled by the opposition's selective use of the facts and their spin. Now 300 Canadian economists from across the country have said the price on pollution is the best way to reduce carbon emissions in a manner that actually addresses affordability. It is a true shame in this House that we have a climate-denying opposition, one that doesn't care about affordability. It is truly a shame.
The honourable member from Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, while grocery CEOs make record profits, students are having to turn to campus food banks to eat. When I spoke with Carleton University,
I've got to use the
students,
washroom,
they told
guys.
me
I'll be right
food
back.
bank usage is on the rise, up 140% on campuses across the country. Students should be focused on studying for exams, not on starving. In this year's budget, will the Liberals finally put a stop to grocery CEO price gouging that's forcing students to turn to food banks?
The Honourable Minister for Innovation.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for her question, but it seems that she's been missing on some of the great announcements we've been doing for the last 2 weeks, Mr. Speaker, explaining Canadians how we're going to help them. Mr. Speaker, we just announced a national food school program, Mr. Speaker. This is going to be helping more than 400,000 kids in this country because we understand, Mr. Speaker, something that the Conservative can never understand. They repeat the same thing for 8 years. Confident nation invest in their people. Confident nations invest in their kids. Confident nations invest in their workers, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we know that every day is a good day to fight for Canadians. That's what we're going to be doing.
The honourable member from Timmins James Bay.
For years, people in Attawapiskat have lived in mold-filled homes, sheds, and even tents on a tiny plot of land. This is because the feds and Doug Ford refused to transfer land so they can build the homes they need. The Liberals would rather protect the land interests of the mining giant De Beers, a corporation that made $21 million from the sale of a single diamond in Attawapiskat. They're putting the interests of De Beers ahead of people who desperately need safe homes. When will the Liberals stop stalling and give the land back to the Cree of Attawapiskat? Good question.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member opposite for his years of advocacy for the rights of Indigenous people, including for the people of Attawapiskat. As the member notes, Attawapiskat is currently landlocked. Indeed, they're looking for more land to build those necessary houses to help the community grow. I've been communicating with the province of Ontario, who currently is the owner of the land, and we will continue to ensure that Ontario understands the urgency of this work.
Heidi was pretty brutal,
The honourable member
just to
from
say.
Kingston and the Islands.
Mr. Speaker, Danielle from Alberta knows that she gets back more in the Canada carbon rebate than she pays through the federal-backed South on pricing pollution. Premier Smith, Danielle, actually did the math herself and came to the conclusion that, quote, I would say that I probably ended up better off with that transfer, end quote. Can the Minister of Environment and Climate Change please inform Danielle and other Canadians of what they should expect to see in their bank accounts today as a result of the Canada carbon rebate and how much this policy is helping Canadians with the cost of living while at the same time protecting the environment for generations to come?
The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank Danielle for her testimony.
Oh, come on, Guibo, come on.
Rebate
payments starting to arrive in Canadian bank accounts and mailboxes as of today. In Daniel's province of Alberta, a family of 4 will receive up to $450 4 times this year, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, over 300 economists, it was 200 last week, it's now 300, from coast to coast agree that the evidence showed that not only does carbon pricing reduce pollution in Canada, but it does so at a lower cost than any other approaches. Pricing pollution works, it can support Canadians and fight for climate change. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from Lethbridge.
Here we go. It's fun. Lethbridge sounds fun. It's Thomas, yeah.
Every single week I hear from dozens of constituents in my area who are telling me that they're struggling to be able to buy food, groceries, necessities. Food bank in my area has more than doubled in recent months. After 8 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, he is just not worth the cost. That is clear to Canadians. So Conservatives have put forward a common sense solution. It's called Bill C-234. This government decided to gut it by bullying their senators. Will the Prime Minister choose to rescind and allow the bill to go forward in order to save Canadians a whole lot of money by scrapping the tax from farmers?
The Honourable Minister for Employment and Workforce Development.
Speaker, at the risk of putting holes into what they think is a good Tory story, let's look at some of the facts. 97% of farm liquids are exempt from price on pollution. Tyler McCann at committee, Mr. Speaker, indicated, and he is from the Canadian Agri-Food Policy Institute, indicated that there is no data to support carbon pricing and any increase on the price of food in Canada, full stop. Mr. Speaker, our Canada Carbon Rebate gives money back to more than 8 out of 10 Canadians. If they want the bill back, bring it back to the House. They can do it.
Bolsonaro is such a geek, right?
I'll ask the honourable member from Peace River Mackenzie, please, to wait his turn. He's an experienced, very experienced member of this House. The honourable member from Lethbridge.
No matter what this government does to try to distract, the facts remain the same. Canadians are struggling. They cannot make ends meet. And of course, it starts with groceries and fuel at the pumps and being able to heat our homes. After 8 years, this NDP Liberal Prime Minister just is not worth the cost, certainly not the cost of the punitive carbon tax. Conservatives put forward a very common sense bill, C-234, which would axe the tax from farmers and save Canadians a whole lot of money. The Prime Minister and the Environment Minister put pressure on senators, bullying them into gutting this bill. Will the Prime Minister agree today to allow this bill to go forward in its unamended original form?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
The Honourable Member may have missed my earlier answer, but I could repeat it if she would like. The bill in question, C-234, is a bill that the Conservatives could call any time and we could deal with and debate in this House. And while I'm on my feet, once again, I would like to add,
Since I'm standing up,
correct something I said a little earlier to the other Honourable Member. This member could help a lot of Albertans out if she just get out of the way of the fall economic statement legislation, which doubles the top-up on the rural rebate, Mr. Speaker, 20% instead of 10%.
For the last time, I would like to remind the very experienced members.
For the last time, he's saying. Now he's being demanding.
He should only
Fergus
take
should
the floor
sit down
when
and
he's
shut
recognized
up.
by the Speaker. L'honorable député de Beauce.
The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, for 8 years, this Liberal bloc PM has not been worth the cost of the carbon tax. Farmers are rebelling against him. Mountains of red tape, a real lack of financial support, and a carbon tax which is stifling the farm sector throughout Canada. Getting rid of this carbon tax will be the quickest way of making food more affordable and helping our farmers keep working. But the Bloc Québécois wants to radically increase the tax. Will the Prime Minister commit to adopting C-234 in its original form without amendment in the budget tomorrow? The Honourable Minister of the Environment and Climate Change. Mr. Speaker, if the Conservatives had an ounce of intellectual integrity, they would admit to Canadians that 97% of fuel used on farms where there is pollution pricing is not taxed by the federal government, first of all. Secondly, Do you know what I've been doing, Mr. Speaker, recently? I've been meeting with farmers from Quebec, Alberta,
Welcome
Nova
to
Scotia.
anybody that's new to the chat. We try to have a
I've
fun
been
time.
meeting
There's
with
an
grain farmers,
amazing
cattle
crew
farmers.
of
They don't
people
talk to
here
me
that
about
watch
carbon
the
pricing.
soap opera together.
They talk to me about the hundreds of
You'll
millions
figure it out.
of dollars
I think you'll like this spot.
due to impacts from
compared
climate
to some
change
other
in the
places.
farming
We
sector
watch
in the
the
country.
politics. We're real, but got to keep
Once
it contained. It is our soap opera, and to any of the new people that are watching in
It is
the
a
chat
shame
room,
to have to remind very experienced members, like the member
come
for Louis
back. I
Saint-Laurent,
think
that
you'll
they
like
have
it.
to wait their turn before speaking in this House.
Speaker's
The honourable member for Beauce.
off the rails today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just like to ask my colleagues to come to Beauce next week because there will be a farmers' protest. Young farmers who are dreaming of setting out in life are being smothered by increasing amounts of red tape, skyrocketing interest rates, and risk management programs that no longer meet needs. The Liberal Bloc coalition is blocking Bill C-234 that shows that they are completely disconnected. I will ask my question again. Will the Prime Minister commit to passing C-234 in its original form without amendment in the budget tomorrow?
Ministre de Revenu National.
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr.
Lord
Speaker,
Bibeau
it's
is
a
a
shame that my
big
Quebec colleagues have not
WEF
yet
person.
seemed to figure out
I know that you're not supposed to
the
talk
pollution
about
pricing
that on
system does
YouTube,
not apply
but she's in there
Quebec.
pretty
There's
high.
been a carbon market there since 2013.
You can look it
There's
up.
no impact from
I
the
did.
federal system. In the federal government, we're using incentives to push people to better practices. Incentives to acquire greener equipment and so on. We will be there for all farmers, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Mr. Speaker, instead of acting like the sorcerer's apprentice in Quebec jurisdiction in the budget, the federal government should help asylum seekers. These are people who don't even have a right to work. They've been waiting for 2 years for the federal government to give them a permit. They're waiting at food banks. They are ending up on the streets. They're being exploited in the black market. They're being trafficked and more. Will the minister finally convince his buddies to give them work permits? Would he do his job before instead interfering with other people's matters? The Honourable Minister.
Effectivement en train d'accélérer.
Mr. Speaker, we
Ronald
are
McDonald
accelerating
in the House.
granting permits to asylum seekers. I have a question for
Double
the member for
cheeseburger,
Lac-Saint-Jean.
please.
Does he agree with the leader of his party who wants to freeze immigration? Does he know what that means in rural ridings like Lac-Saint-Jean? No more farming, no more fisheries, nothing, not even wind energy. We need responsible people in power. We need accountable discussions about immigration levels. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. I just told the member to keep his nose out of jurisdictions that don't belong to him, and he's not listening. The federal government is now
you just
facing
say
a
that?
humanitarian crisis.
Keep your nose out of our business.
And it also needs to ensure that when
Good.
people arrive, they're fairly spread out between provinces, because it's not okay that there are asylum seekers who are homeless in Quebec and Ontario who are not even able to get food at food banks, while meanwhile other provinces aren't doing anything. Will the government finally show enough humanity to share the load between provinces, many of which still have plenty of room to offer more services? The Honourable Minister of Immigration. Mr. Speaker, there's no sense to what my colleague is saying. Sometimes they want more federal interference, sometimes they don't. But he didn't answer my question. Does he stand with the leader of his party, the leader of the Bloc Québécois, who wants to irresponsibly freeze Quebec immigration? It's so irresponsible. He should talk to people in fisheries. He should talk to farmers. These are people in rural ridings who are struggling. We're not going to help them by freezing Quebec immigration.
The Honourable Member from Kelowna Lake Country.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, life has gotten worse for Canadians with higher taxes and higher mortgage payments. The Liberals' wasteful deficit spending left interest rates at 5%, hurting families with mortgages coming up for renewal. And banks are putting more money away for possible mortgage defaults. Now, this means people losing their homes.
Ask the Honourable Member to start again. I'm going to ask all members, please, to please take down your conversations to outside of the room. Je vais demander à tous les députés, s'il vous plaît, d'avoir...
I'm going to ask all members to take their conversations outside the room. And let the member for Kelowna Lake Country ask her question.
Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this NDP Liberal Prime Minister, life has gotten worse for Canadians with higher taxes and higher mortgage payments. The Liberals' wasteful deficit spending left interest rates at 5%, hurting families with mortgages coming up for renewal. The banks are putting more money away for possible mortgage defaults, and this means more people losing their homes. We're hearing of people no longer meeting mortgage stress tests, having to sell their home, forcing them to rent, paying rent more than their actual mortgage payments. Will the NDP Liberal Prime Minister reverse his 8 years of deficit spending and implement a one-for-one rule so that people can keep their homes?
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, it would be more prudent for the members on the other side of the aisle to actually vote in favour of supports for Canadians if they truly cared about their well-being. They have voted against the Canada Child Benefit. They voted against dental care. They voted against $10 a day child care. They also did not focus on poverty when they were in power. We have brought poverty down to 7.4%, while under the Conservatives it was 14.5%. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we will always support the most vulnerable in our country.
The Honourable Member from Kelowna Lake Country.
Well, Mr. Speaker, through 8 years of NDP Liberal deficit spending, they caused the higher interest rates, which is causing people's mortgages to go up. Families are slashing their budgets to just be able to afford their mortgages to hang on to their homes. And this year, Canada will spend $54 billion servicing Liberal debt. This is more money than the government sends to the provinces for health care. A dollar-for-dollar rule would fix the budget and bring down interest rates. This NDP Liberal Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. Will the Prime Minister reverse 8 years of deficit spending and implement a dollar-for-dollar rule?
He's corrupt. The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we know how to ensure that we have a prudent fiscal situation as well as to support Canadians, especially in their time of need. We have the lowest debt to GDP ratio in the G7. We have historically low unemployment,
check out my video
Mr. Speaker,
that I
and we
posted
also
yesterday.
have a AAA credit rating. Our
They're
upcoming
lying to you.
budget will build on that work by putting forward new
Deceiving
funding
you,
for
at least.
housing, ensuring that we are there for children with a national school food program for 400,000 children, Mr. Speaker. We ask everybody in this House to vote with us. Thank you.
L'honorable député de Montmagny-Lillet, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup.
The honourable member for Kamouraska, Montmagny-Lillet, Kamouraska, Rivière-du-Loup. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After 8 years of this Liberal government, home ownership is harder and harder. There's been an increase of 52 to 95.2% in mortgage rates in some parts of Quebec. It's increasingly difficult for young people to get a mortgage. This Prime Minister is much too expensive. He's just not worth the cost of mortgage payments. Will he listen to the millions of Canadians who are struggling? Will he put an end to his inflationary policies once and for all? The Honourable Minister of Public Services and Procurement. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's the number of affordable housing units that were built by the current leader of the opposition when he was Minister of Housing. Listening to my colleague's question, when I look at the projects in his writing, well, 41 units of affordable housing were built in his riding just over the last few weeks, thanks to the municipality that the leader of the opposition called incompetent, by the way. So the leader of the opposition only managed to build 6 throughout his entire time throughout the country. Which of the two systems is more incompetent? Let me ask you that. The honourable member for Sudbury. Mr. Speaker, the federal carbon pricing system was designed to keep life affordable for families by putting money back to their pockets. The next quarterly payments will be sent to Canadians' bank accounts and mailboxes starting on April 15th. Can the President of the Treasury Board tell this House how these rebates will reduce emissions and make life more affordable for families throughout the country? The Honourable President of the Treasury Board. Mr. Speaker, when Conservatives deny climate change, they are also denying science. With our carbon pricing system, we are making big polluters pay and giving more money back to Canadian families. 8 out of 10 Canadian families, including in my riding of Oakville, will have more money in their pocket. On this side of the House, we will continue to make our economy greener. The environment and the economy go hand in hand.
Hey, Gillis, hey,
Unlike the Conservatives,
Gerard, what's up?
we believe in science.
Gerald,
The honourable member from Calgary Midnaport.
Mr. Speaker, the procurement ombudsman confirmed what we already respected, and that
Here we
is
go.
Dominic Barton and McKinsey & Company receive preferential treatment in contracting. The Liberal NDP government has given over $100 million in contracts to McKinsey & Company. This Prime Minister is not worth the cost of consulting. So why is it that Liberals take care of themselves, friends and insiders, when they should be taking care of Canadians?
Doing well. Gillis, what's up? Mike Tremblay, what's going on, man? How are you?
Minister of Public Works.
Thank you, Mr.
Betty
Speaker.
Boone,
And taking
Betty
care
Zoom.
of Canadians is
What's up?
exactly what we need to do on this House and
Do
other
close,
houses certainly,
Brooks.
through proper management of procurement exercises with the type of things and measures that we have announced in the last few weeks and months, but also looking after the needs of Canadians with the important investment in housing that we have made, and we're maybe making even more with the announcements come tomorrow. 8,000 homes, affordable homes, just in the province of Quebec, and hundreds of thousands of them across Canada.
Here.
The honourable member from Calgary Midnaport.
All right, here we go.
Mr.
Stephanie
Speaker,
Cousy.
a Liberal
Let's get some likes
minister
going for
personally
Stephanie
signed
Cousy.
a contract for McKinsey & Company for $5.7 million. No wonder they didn't want to give us the documents. They were trying to protect their ministers.
right.
Department officials were trying to push back. They said, don't sign that document, Minister. The minister went ahead and personally signed the document. Why is it that Liberals take care of themselves when they should be taking out the trash and taking care of Canadians?
The honourable Minister for Public Services and Procurement.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. J'ai déjà répondu.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I already answered this question in English. I will answer the same way in French. We are taking care of Canadians while also ensuring that our procurement system is fair and transparent, thanks to the new rules that we've created over the last few months, among other things. But taking care of Canadians also means recognizing the housing crisis that they're experiencing. And that's why over the last few days we announced several new measures that will also be announced tomorrow in the budget.
Member from Sherwood Park, Fort Saskatchewan.
This NDP Liberal Prime Minister is not worth the cost of a less stable world. 6 years ago, Parliament voted for my motion to recognize that the regime in Iran's IRGC is a terrorist organization and to shut down their operations in Canada. But in 6 years, this NDP Liberal government has failed to act. Liberals even blocked my common sense Bill C-350 to shut down the IRGC. So with the IRGC spreading terror across the Middle East and around the world, why did this Prime Minister choose to allow the IRGC to continue to recruit, fundraise, and promote its ideology here in Canada?
The honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, we've said many times in this House, my colleague, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, has repeated it, Iran is a state sponsor of terrorism. We have taken a series of severe measures to restrict members of the regime, including the Revolutionary Guard Corps, from coming to Canada. With respect to listing a terrorist entity, it's national security agencies that do these reviews and from time to time provide advice to the government. Obviously, Mr. Speaker, all options are on the table, and I've asked the national security community to provide the government quickly with that advice.
The honourable member from St. John's East.
Putting a price on carbon pollution is one of the simplest and most effective ways to reduce pollution that is causing climate change. Just as importantly, the federal carbon pricing system is designed to keep life affordable by putting money back into families' pockets. Can the Minister of Rural Economic Development share with Canadians how much they will get back in payment starting today, April 15th?
The honourable Minister for Rural Economic Development.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, the next Canada rebate check starts coming in people's bank accounts and in their mailboxes. And families in the members riding in St. John's are going to receive up to $298. And those everywhere else in Newfoundland and Labrador, Mr. Speaker, are going to get $327 on their April quarterly deposit. However, unfortunately, the Conservatives are showing once again they really don't care about rural Canadians. They're holding up the doubling of the rural top up, Mr. Speaker, keeping those rebates from being even bigger. We know the price on pollution works, and we know we are putting money back in Canadians' pockets. I just wish the Conservatives did.
The honourable member from Nunavut.
The school that I graduated from, the Attawapiskat Elementary School in Igloolik, is falling apart under the Liberals' watch. A recent report said there are 127 issues that need fixing, including safety hazards like missing handrails and exposed electrical circuits. Children cannot learn when their school is crumbling. In Budget 2024, will the Liberals invest in fixing or replacing schools so Nunavut children can learn safely?
The Honourable
Parliamentary wasn't wearing any makeup.
Thank you,
I don't know if you
Mr.
noticed.
Speaker, and I want to thank my colleague for her question. We agree that every child in Canada
There's
should
not
have the
enough makeup
opportunity
in
to
the
go to
bucket
school
for
in a
Yvonne
proper
Jones.
environment and also to go to school on a full belly. That's why we've implemented programs to support schools, support students, and to support the school food program, which we think is very important for kids all across Canada, including those in the Arctic and in Nunavut.
Good job.
The honourable member from Spadina, Fort York.
Mr. Speaker, the Islamic regime in Iran, the official supplier of rockets to Hamas, has now fired its own weapons at Israel. Is the NDP Liberal coalition still considering stopping arms exports to Israel and limiting that country's defense capacity? Has the launching of over 200 drones and cruise missiles been enough to silence the government's NDP masters? It must be difficult being a partner with a partner that is so deaf, blind, and quiet on Iran and Hamas's crimes. Mr. Speaker, has the Prime Minister at least learned something and will not be repeating his 2015 promise to normalize relations with Iran in the upcoming election?
The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Speaker, Canada unequivocally condemns the attacks by Iran against Israel. This was unprecedented. We support Israel and its people. This attack only served to destabilize the region and further escalate in the region, and this is completely unacceptable. That is why I've been in contact with my Israeli counterpart, and also I've been in contact with many actors in the region, and we will continue to push proactively to make sure that indeed there is no further escalation and that we bring back peace to the region. Thank you so much.
Et voici la fin de la période des questions.
That concludes question period.
L'honorable Monsieur.
Here we go, guys. Yeah, I don't know what to do now. Are we just going to close out the show? It would seem like a really, really quick, easy episode. But I think we might just keep it light for Monday because I've got some other things that I want to work on. I do have some videos to show. What should I do? The thing is, for me to show another video that might be another hour and a half long, then I don't have my computer to edit with, and I can't do anything, and I have this other, it's complicated. We're probably just going to wrap this up. I think that's probably where we're going. It's super fun. I see a bunch of new people in the room. It blows me away, Mr. Pickles. Dive Crew Canada, that's not a surprise, but Mr. Pickles, you surprised me in a very pleasant way, bro. Thank you. And to anybody else that gets a membership, I'm not doing enough for the memberships yet because I'm trying to just grow my base numbers. And so there's some time management there that we need to work on, and I am trying really hard. Before we go, I want to give a special shout out to my friend Sheila, who's been helping me on this channel a great deal. She's our moderator. I know that it doesn't appear as other moderators from other sites. We're working on that. We'll get that fixed up. But just to let everybody know, Sheila is a stud on this channel that helps us keep it clean, keep the information flowing, and I can't say enough. It was good advice. Dive Crew Canada was involved in the decision on getting Sheila as moderator. He literally suggested to me, Sheila, he's like, you should get Sheila to do that. And I was thinking the same thing, so that was enough to base our decision on that. And it's been working out just great. So that's it. Just wanted to say thank you to Sheila and everybody else that's been helping out. That's all. We are going to wrap this up. We might be back later this evening with a broadcast of the committee investigation. I have the whole thing. I could run it now, but then if I start running it now, I can't do anything else until then. And I need another computer, guys. It's as simple as that. So send me a new computer if anybody has an extra. All it would take is a MacBook Air or something like that. We could keep it going then. Probably buy one tomorrow. Gonna have to. Anyways, guys, it was super interesting. Pierre was in the house, so that's always more fun. And some strange answers from some strange people. Magoo has to go. Like, how? I think he's 78. And not to like pick on the elderly, because that's not the idea, but the elderly retirement's part of the process. I'm a farmer, he says. Laugh out loud. That's it, guys. We're wrapping up. I do care about you guys. It's fun. I've got friends that I've made online through a YouTube channel about Canadian politics. In my wildest dreams, I never would have thought. However, in my day-to-day life, in the days now, it's like, we got these people. It's awesome. It's incredible. Let's give them something fun to watch. With some information, a little bit of humor, maybe some education. Anyway, I'm Ehren, Question Period Canada. We are going to wrap it up and put out a couple of more videos this evening. It's a tough thing. I just need more computers because I want to do something right now with this committee meeting that was super interesting. That piece that I showed with Kusi earlier, that's where it was from. But then I can't do anything else. I need another computer, guys. Simple as that. Anyhow, we're going to run. Thank you all so much for watching. If you ever want to be in touch with me, I'm going to put my email up here. And just be in touch. If you have any questions, concerns, anything at all, some feedback, some negative criticism, my skin is thicker than it looks, bring it on. We just want to make it better for you guys because the whole idea is to educate Canadians, people like me that don't know enough about Canadian politics, about Canadian federal politics, and that's what we're doing. We're wrapping up. Ehren, Question Period Canada. Like, subscribe, share, get notified. That helps. We're wrapping it up. It's been fun, always. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place, with something interesting. Well, it's going to be Question Period tomorrow, but maybe we'll have something else. I'm just trying to figure out time management. There's so many moving parts. Anyway, before we go, I guess, one of the things I forget to do often is post the last poll that I posted. So there's the results of the last poll. Duclos was raised in a seminary. That's a fact. So might explain some of his oddness, his awkwardness. Who knows? Anyways, Pickles, Cryptomeria, there's so many people I want to thank on here. Anyways, Pickles, you did surprise me today. Kirk, not a surprise you're here being supportive. We're growing something here, guys. It's really, really sweet. That's awesome. We're out. Have something healthy to eat. Try to stay warm. Spring is in the air. It's a beautiful day here in Nova Scotia. Take care, guys, and we'll be back this evening. I've got a feeling I'm going to do something live this evening. All right. We're out.